What's good, y'all? So today I'm going to be talking about the worst power crisis in Texas history and give you a brief rundown of why this is happening. As always, thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. If you want to see more progressive political commentary, follow me on social media, on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. All the links will be in the description below, but let's get into it. So right off the bat, it's important to note that there are three power grids in America. There is the Western power grid and the Eastern power grid. So the West states are in the Western power grid and the East are in the East power grid. Texas is the only state that has their own power grid. This stems from the fact that they typically are very against the idea of having any federal regulation. They're very into deregulation in Texas. So that's why Texas has their own power grid. It's divided into the North and South. Now, there is a nonprofit organization called ERCOT. That stands for Electric Reliability Commission of Texas. They are the ones that operate the power grid in Texas. They cover most people in Texas. It's important to note that actually, like in areas like El Paso, Texas, which is in the West, they use the Western power grid. That's why they don't have a power outage in El Paso. So keep that in mind. So ERCOT, they are basically regulated by the Texas Utility Commission, I believe is what it's called. The problem with the power grid in Texas is the fact that the private industry that operates the grid did not find it financially feasible to winterize their machinery. So basically what this means is that they knew, actually, and I'm going to get into this later, that the machinery, the coal plants, the natural gas plants, they were not winterized properly. They knew about this, but they decided to not, spend the money to winterize the power grid because they thought, oh, it's Texas, man. The weather ain't even that bad. Let's just save a couple of bucks. We don't want regulations. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. And Texas has created an electric grid that has prioritized cheap prices over reliable services. So one of my main points of this video is that deregulation is a very, very bad thing, especially when it comes to basic utilities that people need to survive, right? We see that grocery stores are not in operation right now. Millions of people don't have electricity, so they're freezing. Some people, in the process of trying to heat themselves, they have turned on carbon monoxide, or rather they've turned on their cars in their garage and died of carbon monoxide poisoning. Around 20 people have died. A dozen kids or more actually have been treated for carbon monoxide poisoning. This is all that can happen because of deregulation. And I'm seeing Republicans, especially Governor Abbott of Texas, blaming this on green energy, the Green New Deal, which hasn't been implemented. And I want you guys to stop and just flat out reject those talking points because they are lying to you. That is a deflection. This is not about wind turbines or anything like that. In fact, in the state of Iowa, 40% of their electricity comes from wind turbines, right? And get this, in Des Moines, Iowa, temperatures have recently been hitting as low as minus 17 degrees. And the wind turbines are working just fine. So this is not an indictment on Green New Deal. Do not fall for that propaganda. In fact, renewable energy only makes about 20% of Texas's electricity, and it's unrelated to the state's other traditional power generators that are shut down or malfunctioning. And I want to get to one of the important points. The authorities in Texas, ERCOT, the lawmakers, there was a report that came in 2011 after they had another winter storm in Arlington, Texas. That was, granted, not as severe, but this report after this storm in 2011 said that the natural gas supply lines, the coal plants, and all of their energy grid components, they were not winterized properly, or they weren't winterized at all. They knew about this and they decided to not spend the necessary capital to make sure that their power grid was winterized properly in the event that they have to undergo cold climate like we're seeing now. So they tried to save money, and now we're seeing people needlessly dying, people needlessly freezing in their homes, having to go sleep in neighbors' houses, all for what? This is such an indictment on the government of Texas, and they wanted to be in their own electric island, and this is what we're seeing happening. Also, it's very convenient of Governor Abbott to blame ERCOT for the problems that are going in Texas. And they're largely to blame, of course, but it's important to note that he himself, the guy, is funded by the oil and gas industry. He gets a lot of political contributions, but about $26 million of the $150 million that Governor Abbott has raised over the last 6 years. $26 million from that amount that he's raised has been from the oil and gas industry. And that's going to explain why he was going on Fox News and blaming solar and wind producers, even though natural gas, coal, and nuclear energy were responsible for nearly twice as many outages. So, yeah, he's a fraud. He's corrupt like pretty much everyone else in the Republican Party, although the Democrats are largely corrupt as well too, but I digress. Yeah, so don't fall for any of those deflections that the Republicans are trying to say that this is somehow related to wind turbines. It's all a bunch of nonsense. This is because of deregulation. You guys wanted to leave it to the market, and now we're seeing the aftermath of that. That's why you should not try to save money and cut corners on basic utilities. I hope at the end of this that there's going to be criminal charges laid against lawmakers and ERCOT officials, because this was so unavoidable. You guys had one job, which is to make sure that your equipment, the power grid, is able to function in colder temperature. But you guys are incompetent, and now people are suffering because of that. And I also hope that some legislation is going to come that's going to crack down on this very loose regulations in the energy industry in Texas. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about the power crisis in Texas, the worst in their history. I hope I was able to do a pretty good job of summing it up for you briefly, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.